Hey, everybody, good evening. Welcome to a special edition of the Giant Zone podcast. Steve is tied up this evening for Yom Kippur, so I'll be doing the show. We got a special show for you tonight. We're joined by two diehard Green Bay Packers fans from the Average Cheese podcast. It's a Packers podcast, and they were nice enough to give me some time tonight. You've got Dale on one side of the screen there. And down below me, you've got Peter, and Peter is actually in London. He lives in the UK. So he was nice enough to grace us with some time tonight. And guys, again, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you doing this tonight, guys.
Right on. Thanks for having us.
No,
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So let's kind of get into this. Why don't you guys give us a little background about yourself first, how you guys became Packers fans, and how long, so on and so forth.
Peter, your story is more interesting. Why don't you go first?
Well, I mean, mine is, obviously in the UK, American football, as we call it's not our natural sport, but growing up, the guy that lived next door to me worked at the local US Air Force base, and he was from Madison, Wisconsin. Was a huge Packers fan, and as a young kid, he got me started on this sport that I'd never seen. And yeah, that's pretty much how I became a Packers fan. So we're talking 40 plus years ago. Wow. I'm showing my age now. And and it began by listening to games on the American Forces Network before we had it on TV here. So I got to hear it on radio before I ever got to, see live games. And then live football kind of took off here in the UK during the 80s, which wasn't a great time for the Packers, but it generated lots of Giants fans in that mid 80s period. Everybody remembers those Giants teams, the Phil Simms, the Lawrence Taylors, those guys. And but yeah, and I guess in the last 10 to 15 years or so, the game has really taken off in the UK. And so there's, tens of thousands of fans, if not more than that, from each team over here. And it's cool.
And is there a large Green Bay Packers following out there, Peter?
Yeah, it's I would say it's one of the largest followings in the UK, and I guess there's certainly a recency bias around that. The Packers having had a modicum or a certain amount of success over the last quarter century or so through the Favre era and the Rodgers era, and so we had the kind of first wave of fans in the 80s, and then we've generated a second or third wave of fans in the last 20 or so years. So yeah, it's quite a thriving group of Packers fans who have been waiting for this day to see the Packers come over to London. So yeah.
And can you see all the games from there now?
Yeah, so we get two live games on a Sunday, plus the Sunday night game, the Monday night game, the Thursday night game. Now the two games during the day on a Sunday, you don't get to pick and choose those. They broadcast whichever ones they choose to broadcast.
Sure.
But many of us subscribe to NFL Game Pass, which gives us the choice of any of the live games. So yeah, there's plenty of avenues now to see pretty much every game that you want to see.
That's interesting. And Dale, what about you?
I was born and raised here in Wisconsin, so I had no choice to be a Packer fan. It was just inbred into me. I remember games in the 70s too, when the Packers were god awful, and my dad would sit in front of the TV and just cuss at the TV. And now I've become that guy, except my kids don't watch the games with me. They know that that's dad's like alone time. I basically stand in front of the TV, Carl, and stare at the TV and swear at it all day. Like, I'm not a big, let's have a party and watch a Packer game guy. I need to sit there and concentrate, people. You can't be in the room with me.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I can't go to a bar and watch it. I can't have a house full of people. I have a friend of mine that lives about a half hour, 40 minutes away from me, and he's got a nice setup. He's got 4 televisions in his living room. He's got the NFL, the DirecTV package. So I essentially can watch every game every Sunday. So I've actually seen a lot of the Packer games. So that's a really sweet setup. So I'm a little spoiled in that respect. But I feel your pain as far as I need just silence and the television. It's really what I need.
Yeah.
And why don't you? So you guys have a podcast. Why don't you give us a little background about your podcast as well? How'd you get into it? The name of it, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So my friend Todd and I started the podcast 3 years ago during the pandemic. Him and I had been texting during Packer games since forever. Like him and I were lifelong friends. We've been friends since like the third grade. And all we did was text and text. No matter where he was in the world, we would always text, like, what's going on with this Packer game? He'd be like, I'm in Dubai. And I'd be like, okay, let me look that up on a map. And I'd be like, yeah, and Gary's doing this or whatever. So we decided during the pandemic, we just start a podcast and start talking to each other, do our therapy 40 minutes at a time rather than, one text here and there during games. And then Todd took a hiatus and Peter was nice enough to come on and continue. And I don't remember what episode that was, Peter, you started in, but it was probably 70 or 80 episodes ago. We just, we became friends from there. So yeah, the Average Cheese Podcast we're getting old.
Yeah.
Almost 100 episodes in.
Yeah. They've not been able to get rid of me, Carl. So they had me on once, and I won't leave the podcast studio. That's what it is.
Oh, that's great. We started, I believe, in February of this year. And so I think this is episode number 35 for us. So
awesome.
During the off season, and you guys know the challenge is trying to continually come up with content. And
right.
So what we try to do is we'll just invite a follower onto the show and let them ask questions. So this way we're not being repetitious. It's coming from the followers and we're just trying to build a community. And so far it's been very well received. The season's going pretty good. Got a lot of shows like this on the schedule. So we're excited about it. It's a labor of love,
Absolutely it is.
And it's just a nice distraction from life.
Yeah. And when your Giants are good, it's nice and enjoyable to, keep that going.
If we would have started this last February, I don't know if we'd even still be doing it. They were bad last year.
Yes, they were.
But so let's kind of get into this, guys, because I know everybody wants to kind of hear what we're in for and what to expect on Sunday. So let's start off. What do you think of the team 4 weeks in?
It's a different team without Davante Adams. And we've talked about it ad nauseum during the summer about how, we don't know. We were upset when he left, right? But then it was like, okay, still have Aaron Rodgers, still have Aaron Jones, still have A.J. Dillon, still have weapons to go with. But I think after 4 weeks of watching it, we are missing Davante Adams for sure. It's a different offense. It's not as dynamic. Aaron Rodgers historically is not good to rookie wide receivers, and he doesn't throw to them regardless. In fact, I just saw something on Twitter where he was saying when Davante Adams was a rookie, he'd say, oh yeah, that Adams kid is open all the time. Well, then throw him the football, Aaron. It's like you don't have to, there doesn't have to be this hazing period, but I feel like we're still in this hazing period with, Dobbs and Watson.
And he seems to like Dobbs. I mean, they seem to have a connection that it's growing and it's building. If I'm correct, Watson was hurt early on, correct?
Yeah, he was. Peter, you want to go with that?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, so he was hurt in camp, and then, then he dropped that long bomb on the first play of the first game of the regular season, and then he got banged up again. He hasn't had the long running that you'd like to have through training camp and through the preseason and stuff. So he's still finding his feet. And as Dale kind of indicates, we hope he finds his feet very quickly because, it's an offense that, surprisingly enough, with Aaron Rodgers leading it, is in danger of becoming more and more one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And that's a surprising thing to say, or any offense led by Aaron Rodgers, but that's the way it is. Now, I think the hope that the Packers have is that as the season gets on, towards the end of the season, the synergy starts to happen, and their offense is more dynamic late in the season than it is early, and that it hits its peak at the right time of the season. But it's a big question mark right now, undoubtedly.
Sure. And so, what are the Packers fans saying about the Giants? How are we being viewed by Packers fans right now? Are people concerned, or do they have this marked down as a win? What is the general consensus about the Giants from your side?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I mean, especially early on before the season started, that's an absolute win, right? As bad as the Giants have been recently. But watching the games this season and watching the Packers struggle to defend the run, and then knowing that Saquon Barkley is there and Daniel Jones too. We just talked about it on our podcast last night. Those are two guys that could run the football. And we thought that New England was a for sure win also, and it turned out not to be. So, they're, as much as I thought it would have been a for sure win early on, now I'm not as sure.
And to that point, Dale, excuse me, Peter, but to that point, Dale, what we did during the offseason is once the schedule is released, as we had followers on the show, we would go through the schedule. And I think we all looked at this game as a loss, but what we're seeing now, and okay, 3-1, and the offense has been a little choppy, but the defense has really stepped up. The confidence in Giant fans about this game is that, hey, we may be able to win this game, and it's really been it's been remarkable the way that this has turned around. I mean, not only the coach has gotten into the heads of the players, they've gotten into the heads of the fans. We're believing. So, but it's good. It's refreshing compared to the last decade that we've had of, oh no, Green Bay in London. Of course, no Devontae Adams, but still to the point. This is not a gimme on either side right now. So it should be an interesting game. Looking forward to a good game. What do you see as the keys to winning for the Packers?
Well, I think the biggest key, I think Dale just nailed it, was the Packers defense ranked 5th overall, but it's ranked 22nd against the run. And given the Giants leading the NFL in rushing, Saquon Barkley being the Saquon Barkley that we all hoped he would be coming out of college, which is a good thing to see. I think it's how well does the Packers run defense match up against the Giants rushing offense. I think that to me is the key to this game. And the concern I think that we have is that we knew that New England would run the ball last Sunday, but even coming into the game with Mac Jones out, when they went to the 3rd string quarterback, you think they're going to run it even more, which they did. But everybody knew they were going to run the ball, and they still managed to run the ball very successfully at more than 5 yards a pop. And I think that's the big concern that we have, is that the game gets shortened, that it becomes tighter because it becomes a running battle, and the struggle for the Packers defense to stop the run. And on paper, and I think Dale would concur with this, on paper, when you look at the Packers individually as players with the talent that they've got on defense, they ought to be able to step up and stop the run, but they haven't done yet so far this season.
And go ahead, Dale.
I think it's the downright refusal by Joe Barry, the defensive coordinator, to stack the box against teams are going to run the football. I don't understand that. I mean, the talent on Green Bay's defensive side of the ball is there, like Peter said. But if you got 6 guys in the box, everybody in the NFL is going to run the football against you with success. And Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson are not Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
So this is a step up in talent level that they're playing against, and you got to stack the box and force Daniel Jones to throw it against you and make him beat you with the pass. I don't understand why we wouldn't have done that last week.
And so you guys kind of lead into a question I had, because you had a good defense. You had a pretty good defense last year. You did, and then you drafted your first 2 draft picks were linebackers, if I'm correct, right? So I was expecting that defense to really be good, and I think they still will be. Maybe they're kind of still figuring it out and learning how to play together. What do you think the issue is there?
Peter, what do you think?
I think it's there. So yeah. So they picked the two guys out of Georgia. One, Devontae Wyatt, the defensive lineman, and Quay Walker,
Yes.
the linebacker. And I think I think it's less about the talent, although we'll come back to Wyatt because Wyatt's hardly played and hasn't yet contributed very much. But I think it's less about the talent and more about the scheme, as Dale alluded to. And it appears to be, from the outside looking in, more passive than it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree with what Dale said. I mean, they've got to get up there. They've got to get guys in the box. They've got to put 7 or 8 in the box to stop the run and force the pass. So I don't think it's as much about players, although players play the game. I think in this instance it's more about scheme. What's interesting about it though is that when the Packers have needed to get off the field, on most occasions they've got off the field. So they've got a lot of third down stops, a lot of third down stops. So from that perspective, it almost feels right now like a bend but don't break defense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a long answer to your question, but it feels more about scheme than it does about player talent right now.
Sure. Do you think they're going to stack the box this week against Saquon? Have you heard anything or read anything? Any dirt you guys can give me? We come up, bring it out, man.
So you can hand it over. I have not heard anything like that. No, that they're going to change anything defensively, which is frustrating as a fan. But hopefully they do, because if Peter and I can see it on TV. When they watch the film at every angle, they have to see that they don't have enough support in the run game to stop the run. I mean, it's not, if it's obvious to us, it has to be obvious to them.
Right. And how are you feeling about the secondary? So your linebackers, your secondary, I understand the concerns about the front and you want to stop the box, of course. What about, but beyond that, what about your linebackers and secondary?
We said it yesterday. Quay Walker and Devondre Campbell are long, athletic, speed guys. They're not guys that are going to come up and thump you in the hole. You know what I mean? They're not going to stop the run as effectively inside the tackles. They're going to chase you down outside for sure, but they're not that guy. The defensive line has to be able to stop penetration at the beginning. Otherwise, I don't think those guys are really built to stop the run between the tackles.
And so what you're saying is that you don't have that Blake Martinez anymore.
Blake Martinez, he always was great at making tackles 5 yards down the field. So, if that's what you need, yeah.
But, to your point, the game has changed where you don't have that thumper, that middle linebacker, that Urlacher, that Harry Carson, that, and I can go on and on and on. It's more geared now towards those athletic linebackers that go sideline to sideline, that can drop back in coverage. So, we have the same situation at linebacker as well. We can get into that, whenever you guys want. But it's curious to hear this. And then what about in your secondary? So is Alexander healthy?
No,
he's listed as questionable again this week. I've no inkling as to whether or not he's going to play. I have a gut feeling that says he won't play because I think Packers are traditionally very cautious about bringing players back from injury, but I've nothing really to base that on. There's no updated reports saying that he will or won't play, but it's just my gut feeling that he won't play.
And that's a big loss because when he's right, he's great.
Yeah, and the depth in the secondary isn't great. We were just talking about Keyshawn Nixon. Keyshawn Nixon took him off the scrap heap, had to go in a game when Alexander went out. That's not a frontline guy. That's not a guy you want taking 45, 50 snaps in a game, but that's what we have. Amos went out with a concussion too in the last game. So now we have Rudy Ford, who is a special teams guy, playing snaps at safety and playing a significant amount of snaps at safety. So it's, that's a concern. But again, if they're going to run the football, that's not as big of a concern to me.
And the frustrating part for Giant fans hearing that would be our wide receiver room has been horrible. And now Galladay's down, so Galladay's not even making the trip.
Oh, okay.
We've got to hope now that Kadarius Toney comes back and can get on the field. The rookie we drafted out of Kentucky, Wan'Dale Robinson, we hope he got hurt, I think, in the second quarter, the first quarter, the game one, and really haven't heard anything about that. So I think they're hopeful he plays. All right, so we have Richie James, free agent, who, okay, he's serviceable. He's a nice player. He's not what I call that impact type of receiver that is gonna, we can throw it deep to, he's gonna go up and get it. And it sounds like that's exactly what we need against your secondary, is that big receiver that could stretch the field and go up and get the jump balls. And,
Right. Absolutely.
We've got Darius Slayton, but Darius Slayton's forgotten how to catch the ball. So hopefully he remembers this week. And that's definitely been a point of frustration with the Giants, for sure. And I hope I'm hopeful it doesn't come back to bite us anywhere along the season. My fear is that somewhere it's going to, and I hope it's not this week. But that's stuff. And the problem with that is, well, who's available?
Right.
There's nobody that you can go out and get and plug and play.
Exactly. Those guys are all gone.
Right. So, to your point, Peter, about the personnel is what the personnel is. It's, we got the lemons, we got to make lemonade out of it.
Right. And you're not helping Daniel Jones, right? Like, Daniel Jones is a young guy. You don't have any weapons to really throw the ball to. You become run heavy, and everybody moves up, and now you make it more difficult for him to throw the football.
Here's the thing about the Giant offense right now, and your point is spot on, Dale, about Daniel Jones. They haven't made it easy for him since day one, since they drafted him. But this is by far probably the best situation that he's been in from a coaching standpoint, probably one of the best offensive lines. And with Saquon being Saquon right now, that's always a benefit. I would expect to see more passes to Saquon out of the backfield. And then you get your tight ends coming in and blocking, going downfield blocking. So I think you're going to see a lot of that as well. He's going to be, obviously, he's the focal point of the offense. And, the good thing about Daniel Jones, and there's a big issue within the Giants fan base, is that, there are some people that just hate him and they're not going to recognize anything positive that he does. But if you've been watching him this year, he's been making much better decisions with the ball. He's been better with his legs. The previous couple of years, every time he ran, we all just kind of covered our eyes and hoped for the best result. He doesn't seem to be taking those big hits. He's protecting himself a little bit better. He's getting down, sliding a little bit more. But boy, you really hate having to rely on your quarterback to be one of your better running backs as well.
Right.
So that's a concern as well for us. And look, it's no secret. You guys are going to see a healthy dose of Saquon Barkley Sunday.
And if you're the Giants, why would you do anything else?
Right.
Get the ball in your hands as your most dynamic offensive player, and keep doing it until they stop you.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Now, here's one thing that we talked about on our show Monday night, is where we're confident. We love this coaching staff. They've really gotten into the heads of the players, and where they've just said, hey, follow me and we'll get you there. Just go play. Like, they're putting the players in the position to be the best they can be. They're not sticking them in. It's not the square peg in the round hole syndrome as we've seen previously. And the players, they love work. They love playing for this guy. Wink on the defense loves playing for him. The offense loves Kafka, loves Dable. So there is a lot of that. We're hopeful. And we can get into the Giant defense and the Green Bay offense as well. So, but what was really stuck out especially last week against Chicago, was that so Daniel Jones went down. Tyrod Taylor comes in, he goes down with a concussion. And the Giants, they never skipped a beat. They're all right, Wildcat. They just seem prepared for whatever the game is going to throw them. Now, you can't prepare for everything, obviously, but they seem to really put a lot of thought into their game plan. What if? So hopefully we won't have to worry about that again this week, but who knows? Who knows? So let's talk about the Green Bay offense. What are you liking right now? What's really got you? Obviously your two running backs are, they're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. But give me something about the offense.
Other than those two guys? Because that really has been our entire offense for the first couple of weeks of the season. Romeo Doubs is somebody that Peter talked about being more NFL ready than Christian Watson, who was picked ahead of him. And he's been spot on with that. I mean, Doubs he played 4 years at Nevada, playing 4 years in college rather than playing in at FBS school, I think prepares him better for the NFL, and it shows. I don't know that there's a lot of comparisons between Doubs and Adams. That's a bit early. I mean, the kid's played 4 games, but I'm excited to see what he can do because he just seems to get open. He doesn't run a 4.3. He's not running that fast, but he seems to get open. And it showed on Sunday. He dropped that ball at the end of the game, but he was open. And Aaron Rodgers is not used to throwing to guys that are open as much. I mean, he has to throw perfect passes a lot of the times. And if you can have guys like Watson and Doubs who can create some separation, that should bode well going forward. So I'm super excited about Romeo Doubs.
And what about Lazard?
What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, well, he missed the opening game of the season, and then gradually got into it at a 100-yard game this past week. As Packers fans, we all like Lazard. Now we recognise that he's not Devontae Adams, but he's not the type of player Devontae Adams was either. I mean, Lazard's a big 6'4", 6'5" guy, helps a lot as a blocker in the running game as well as a superb blocker in the running game. But we like Lazard, and you look at him and you think that's a guy that if he was healthy for a 17-game regular season, that's a guy that could catch 70, 75 passes, that kind of level of receiver. He isn't in the upper echelon, but everybody kind of knows where he is, and we like Lazard a lot, and Rodgers likes Lazard, which I guess is the most important thing.
And the speed comes from Watson, is that correct?
Yes, he's the speed guy for sure.
And you always have Cobb too.
Yeah, who's been a lot better than I expected.
Yeah,
I thought he was only on the roster to make Aaron Rodgers happy, so he could talk to his buddy between games.
right.
But he's been very good. I mean, he's able to get into a spot where he gets open, and I think that security blanket type thing is important. Those short third downs, I think there's going to be a lot of Rodgers to Cobb in that kind of situation.
And he likes to throw it to the backs out of the backfield too, doesn't he?
Yeah, and we've seen more of that this year, and I think that's as much a result of not having Devontae Adams as it is by overall design. But I think it's a similar situation to the Barkley situation, where Aaron Jones is probably right now their most dynamic offensive player. So you want to get the ball in his hands as much as you can. And Dylan is a very underrated pass receiver. Is a good pass receiver coming out of the backfield. Wasn't necessarily looked upon as being that guy coming out of college because he hardly caught a ball at Boston College, but it's very good coming out of the backfield. And I think that, to repeat myself, I think with both of those guys, they want to get them the ball in space and give them the opportunity to make the play. And I think that as those two have been the Packers' two most dynamic players, if you like, on offense this season, they're going to throw a lot to the backs.
Do they run a lot of sets where they're both in the backfield together or not?
This season they've run a lot. So in previous seasons, not so much. Previous seasons it was typically one or the other. This season they've been lined up in the pony backfield a lot. I don't know what the numbers are. Unfortunately, I don't have those in front of me. But it's been a significant amount of the offense has seen two backs on the field. Yeah.
And what about your tight end situation? What's going on there?
Well, Tunyon just came back from an ACL, and I think he's not 100% back. After that, I mean, Mercedes Lewis is a blocker. He's basically a third tackle. And there isn't much after that. We've talked about that. Josiah DeGuara is a guy who will kind of an H-back more than a tight end. And he hasn't done much. And Tyler Davis is just a guy, in my opinion.
Yeah. You know what's funny? Coming into the season, one thing I was very wary about is like I'm going to use Kansas City as an example. So they traded Tyreek Hill, okay, and I, like everybody else, expected them to take a step back. And the same thing with Green Bay once the Devontae Adams trade was made. What's really impressed me and has my concerns is that Kansas City actually, without Tyreek Hill, looks so much more balanced. And I'm waiting to see if that's what's going to happen with the Packers as well. Again, I hope if it does, it's next week.
Right.
Do you see that happening here?
Yeah, I think it has to. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I think that's something as Packers fans that we're kind of holding our hat on. It kind of saying that, okay, we've lost Devontae Adams, but you know what? It's going to open up the offense. More guys are going to catch more passes. They're going to replace Devontae Adams 120 catches a year by 30 to this guy and 50 to that guy and 60. They replace him in the aggregate. Time will tell, but that's kind of what we're hoping is going to happen.
Sure. And how do you feel about the offensive line to this point?
It's a mess right now. It should be better. I have been pining. I won't even say it. David Bakhtiari just came back, was his first full game back. Having one of the top 3 or 4 tackles in the league back in your lineup is better, right? But the rest of it has kind of been not as successful as I thought it would be. Elton Jenkins, they moved him out to right tackle. He's played all over the offensive line, right? And my argument is he's not a right tackle. Looks like he's going to play right tackle in this game again, from what I've heard recently. It's not where it needs to be at this point.
So would you say there's a weakness there on the offensive line? If we can get a pass rush, we may be able to do something?
Yeah. I think it would come from the left side. Elton Jenkins has been terrible, in my opinion, on the right side at tackle. And Royce Newman has been okay. The line went from being a huge strength last year to being just average right now. I don't think that if Thibodeau lines up against Bakhtiari, he's going to have a ton of success, but I think the pressure will have to come from somewhere else. And as far as stopping the run, the Packers have run blocked pretty well so far. They averaged, I don't know what it was, 6 yards a carry maybe last week.
Yeah, I think they've definitely run blocked better than they've pass protected thus far. And I think that, for those of us that follow the draft, it will be interesting to see Kayvon Thibodeau and how he progresses. We're hoping that this isn't Thibodeau's breakout game. But
next week.
But I agree with Dale. It's that right side of the Packers line in particular that would be of concern. So that's where I would expect, if there's going to be pressure on Rodgers, it's going to come in his face or from his right side, the left side of the defensive line.
And you led right into where I was thinking, was that hopefully, look, Thibodeau was hurt early. His first game was the Monday night game against Dallas and really didn't do much. But okay, first game, jitters, got to get into game shape. He showed a little bit last week. And as a Giants fan, we're hoping that continues. Our other big rush or edge on the outside, Azeez Ojulari, is going to be hurt, and I don't think he's playing Sunday. So you catch a little break there, but that's on your left side anyway. So, it'd really be nice to see Thibodeau, make an impact, especially if there's a weakness there for us and for him to exploit.
Has he
Yeah, I
moved
mean,
around a lot, Thibodeau, or is he just primarily on that right side coming?
The majority of the snaps have been on that right side.
Okay.
I think that's where he was, slotted to play when he was coming out of college. And again, having Ojolari on the left, it kind of makes sense. I think there's been a little bit of flopping, but for the most part, he's been on that right side. And if you're, like you said, if you're seeing that there's a little bit of a weakness there, I'm sure the coaches are seeing it also. One of our MVPs has been Wink Martindale so far. He's just, he's been great with this defense. And I think what you're going to see from him Sunday is he's actually been stacking the box, and he's got our safety, Xavier McKinney or Julian Love, playing up in the slot right behind the line of scrimmage. And that's been making a big difference. That's why our run defense has actually been doing pretty good, except for the Monday night game against Dallas. But I don't recall if the report if Leonard Williams made the trip or not. I'm hoping he plays, because him stuffing the box, especially against your backfield, would be such a plus for us. But your running backs, Aaron Jones, Aaron Jones scares me, but AJ Dillon just as good. He's a big boy and he runs hard. And he's fast for a big guy.
Yes, he is. And I think that surprises people, right? Because
Yes.
you're used to the big bruising guys who don't move well. He has pretty good feet for a guy his size.
Yeah, it seems like once he gets into space, he's got another gear. Yeah. So, what questions do you have for me about the Giants?
Do you want to go first, Peter? Because I have some.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, I guess it's more of a statement, but it is a question. And you kind of alluded to it already, Carl. If you're second, Daniel Jones runs the football quite a bit in New York. The question is, like, how much is he going to be able to take? He's not a huge guy. I mean, for a quarterback, he's a pretty good size, but what's their option after that? Running the football. I don't even know who backs up Saquon Barkley, and is it an actual weapon that the Packer fans should be aware of?
So the backup to Saquon Barkley is Matt Breida.
Okay.
All right. NFL experience. He hasn't played much. We saw a lot more of him last week, of course, with the Wildcat. Saquon was taking snaps and then Breida was the running back. But that's not a bad compliment. And again, a lot of it's going to depend if we can get Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinson on the field. You've got, again, they're not going to stretch the field, but they're shifty. And they're both electric when they get the ball. And that's going to be huge. And you can actually use either one as a 1A type running back. If you think about it, you can run the jet sweep. You can have them coming down the line of scrimmage with the jet sweep. You could run end around. You can run a reverse. So hopefully if they get the weapons back, and I'm not even going to say we're going to miss Galladay because he's been non-existent. So all we're trying to do is get more weapons for Daniel Jones. Hence, we don't have to worry about him on the ball as much. I think that would be the ultimate win for us, is if we can get them all on the field. They haven't all played on the field for that long all season, if at all. So and it is a concern. To answer your question, Dale, Daniel Jones has been taking a lot of hits. He's been tough. He's been playing with a lot of heart. Hoping, it looks like the ankle sprain that he took Sunday was not a high ankle sprain, but a low ankle sprain. I saw clips of him running on the field, and he looks pretty good. They activated Davis Webb off the practice squad. So it looks like Daniel Jones is going to be playing, and then Webb is going to be the backup. I'm hoping that's the direction it goes in. How about you, Peter?
Yeah, so as Packers fans, we not a week goes by when we don't talk about special teams. Pretty much because we've had the worst or certainly bottom 5 special teams every year in living memory. It feels like forever since Curly Lambeau was coaching the team. I think we seem to have been in the bottom 5 in special teams. It feels that way. It's a long time. Now, we're getting the feeling it's only 4 weeks. We've got a new punter this year. The special teams is new special teams coordinator, and the special teams looks like it's on the up. So kind of to throw the question at you guys, what's the Giants special teams like, and is it likely to be a game, a difference in the game?
Well, we've got a new punter. He's been doing pretty good. No real complaints there. Of course, we've got Graham Gano as our kicker, who probably outside of Saquon Barkley is our MVP. Coverage has been okay. Every now and then, though, especially on the punt team, you can get a return on them. Kickoff coverage seems to have been a little better. Hoping that continues. Punt coverage has been a little bit of a concern.
What about the
bad, but it hasn't been great.
What about your return game? Because I think that's where we're most concerned, because we historically have not covered kicks or punts very well in the last couple of years.
Richie James has been our returner, and I'd love to see him break one. He hasn't yet. Again, he's serviceable. He's got good hands. I think he's got one fumble, but for the most part, he's been reliable. So we'll see. I mean, I can't say we don't have another Dave Megan on the roster. I sure wish we did. We don't, but let's see. Again, let's lace them up and go.
I think Richie James will break one in week 6.
If the Packers would have played the Giants last year, Richie James would have ran one back for a touchdown, guaranteed. That would have happened.
So let's kind of go with the game plan a little bit. Do you expect, and I know we talked about it a little bit, do you expect a run heavy package from the Packers on offense, or do you see them throwing the ball more, or do you kind of see more of a blend? What should we look for Sunday?
I think that they will run the ball more than they throw it. It's been very strange as Packer fans to watch that happen the first 4 weeks of the season. 50-50 has been the norm, or a little bit more pass heavy, but this is more 60-40 run the football, and that's very strange. So I don't see why that would change. Just like Peter was saying before, until our young receivers figure it out, till Tunyon comes back as a tight end and is at full strength, you got to put the ball in the hands of the guys that could do the most with it. And that's Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. So I would imagine that you're going to see run heavy and short passes to our running backs for sure.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I mean, I think they're very much in the, run the football to set up the pass rather than the other way around. Whereas I think, through most of Rodgers' career, it's been pass the ball to set up the run. Yeah. And I think, to be fair, I think that, again, from the outside looking in, I think that Matt LaFleur, the head coach, I think his instinct is to want to run the football. Mm-hmm. He was at Tennessee before he came to Green Bay, and I think that's kind of what his preferable instinct would be anyway. So yeah, I would imagine, as Dale said, kind of 60-40 run would be the percentages I would kind of expect going in. Now, what happens in the game will obviously change that, but that's kind of what I would expect.
Right, and the defense. So you guys made it sound like they run kind of a pretty vanilla defense for the most part. I mean, is there a lot of blitzing? Is there anything we should kind of keep our eyes open for?
No, it's very vanilla. We've been talking about that. Like, when is that going to change? Offense too, we've said has been very vanilla, but the defense also, you're not going to see guys blitz very often. It kind of, like Peter was saying before, it's kind of bend don't break right now, and that's a little frustrating to watch. But the defensive talent, if you have a mediocre roster of players, then I understand that. Like, sit back, hope for the best, try to get them into 3rd and longs. But you've got talented guys at every level of this defense, and we're not really using them, and that's very strange to us, at least to me.
You almost sound frustrated with the defense.
I am, because you have like the top 5 cornerback. Kenny Clark is maybe the best nose tackle in all football. The linebackers are better than we've had in my lifetime, and they're just sitting back and kind of reacting. And that doesn't seem like a great place to put guys who are super athletic and able to get after the football.
Yeah. And I alluded to it earlier. We have our own issues at linebacker. We had started the season, we drafted Darian Beavers. We cut Blake Martinez. We drafted Darian Beavers, who looked great in the preseason, and then he's done for the year. So we've got Tate Crowder as our inside linebacker, and he had a good game Sunday, to give him credit, but he seems to be inconsistent. I don't know if you saw the game against Dallas 2 weeks ago, that Monday night game. Ezekiel Elliott ran him over going into the end. And,
Right.
I got on Crowder because he had a perfect line on him, and he just kind of threw himself into him instead of football
Breaking
101. You drive through him, you wrap your arms, and you move your legs and you tackle him. So we got that. But then we picked up, we re-signed Jalen Smith, we take him off the street and he's making plays.
He's been very good.
Ex-Packer, right?
Ex-Packer, yeah.
I think he made 5, 6, 7 tackles last Sunday. So hey, I don't know if that's a long-term solution, but if he's going to help stop that run, your running game scares the life out of me Sunday. They really do. You got 2 great backs, and
It's a mutual. We feel the same way. Absolutely. Saquon Barkley scares the heck out of me. No one else really does on that offense, but Saquon Barkley, honestly, if they went like 80-20 run pass, that'd be awful to watch, because they're going to run 5-6 yards a pop, I think, every time he touches the football.
So it seems to me, if we can run the ball successfully, we've got a good shot. We've got a good shot at least a close game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Sounds like we're back in the 1970s, doesn't it? We're both going to run the ball and run the ball.
But I love
the cloud of dust,
I
and we're going to
love-
keep running the ball.
Give me smash mouth, run the ball until you stop me football any day of the week. I love that. So this is great for me. So I'm going to put you guys on the spot here. Predictions for Sunday.
Peter, you go first. So I can just copy you, because you're always right.
So one of the interesting things about Sunday's game, just as a quick aside, so it's the first time there's been a game in London where we've got 2 teams that have a winning record. So that's a great thing to see.
Correct.
I'm obviously going to go with our Packers. I think it's probably not a dissimilar game to the game the Packers played against the Patriots last Sunday. I think the Packers win by around a score, but I think it's tight. I think it's a tight out game. There may be more points in the game at the end of the game than really the game was probably closer than the score may appear to be at the end of the game.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
So give me a score, Peter. I'm not letting you off the hook.
I think the Packers win something like 23-14.
Ooh. All
That's
right.
2 scores.
That is 2 scores. I couldn't count. I can't count at 1:30 in the morning. That is 2 scores.
It's early in the morning for you. I don't have that excuse. So I could be way wrong, and I'm just an idiot. But I think the Packers win by around 1 score too. I think the spread is like +8 right now, something like that. I think it's around that number. I think the Packers will win by a touchdown, maybe 24-17. I keep hoping that the Packers will get out front and keep scoring like they've done in the past. And if they do that, this isn't a close game, but they haven't been able to do that. So I do think that it'll be close, and I think that it'll come down to that 1 score, a stop at the end possibly. So 24-17 Packers.
So, all right, since you guys both went with the Packers, I'm obviously going to go with the Giants.
You have to.
I think it's a close game. I think there's going to be some points scored. I'm going to say 28-24 Giants.
Okay.
In a close game.
It is going to be a close game.
Yeah,
I think we all agree with that.
I see like a late touchdown for the Giants, and then they hold on defense. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So, while I have you guys on the show here, what's going on in Denver with that coach?
You want to go first, Peter, or you want me to say something?
I'll let you go.
So when you have a great quarterback, how do you know if the offense is the great quarterback or if it's the coordinators around them? it's hard to tell, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers has made receivers look great. Does he also make coaches look great? I think it's hard to argue against that. I think when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback, you don't have to be a great coach to make your team look great. And that might be what's going on in Denver. I mean, Russell Wilson is a good quarterback. And I think that now that he's older and less mobile, I think that there's less to his game, and that might be part of it too. But I do think that Aaron Rodgers has made both the Chicago coach and the Denver coach look better maybe than they might be.
Interesting. Now, was he was an offensive coordinator with Green Bay? Is that correct?
Offensive, yeah.
Look, there's obviously something off with that team. I don't think their offensive line is that good either. I think that Denver offensive line is not that great. Not that I have anything to brag about, except for Andrew Thomas. So I'll take, I'm happy in that. And we've got Evan Neal on the other side, who's going to be good. He's getting it, and I'm not really worried about him. But it just seems something is, and now with Javonte Williams down for the year, it's going to be more pressure on Russell Wilson. He's got to throw the ball now.
Yeah, and Melvin Gordon, former Wisconsin guy, I love him, but he's just not the guy he was. He's not Javonte Williams at this point. And he's not the guy that's going to carry the ball 20, 25 times and take pressure off of Wilson. That's for sure.
So you're a Wisconsin guy. So I guess Giant fans have to thank you for the gift of Ron Dane back in the day.
I loved me some Ron Dane. I thought he was going to be a great NFL player. Oh my gosh, he was awful. I mean, the Wisconsin line in the Ron Dane days, you and I could have run through those holes. So to think then that Ron Dane was going to be able to make it on his own, NFL where holes are a lot smaller, just wasn't going to happen as much as I wanted it to.
He was awful.
Oh, he was. He was.
You're lucky I didn't know you back then. I would have drove him up to your house. Guys, any other questions for me before we wrap this up?
No, not for me. Thank you so much.
I just want to say thanks for inviting us both on. It's been really, really neat, and enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, really enjoyed this, guys. Love talking to you guys. Hope we can do this again in the future.
Sure.
Dale,
maybe in the playoffs. Maybe we'll see you in the playoffs.
There you go.
Yeah. Let's do this again.
There you go. Hey, look, if they make the playoffs and they play each other, invitation's wide open, guys. So
for sure,
love to do this. But Dale, safe travels to you tomorrow. Guys, enjoy the game. And again, thank you for your time tonight. Really appreciated this.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Guys, and by the way, everybody, their show is Average Cheese, in case you want to check them out. Great show. And as you can see, two great guys. So if you get a chance, please check them out. Everybody, thank you so much for your support. Guys, have a great night. Thank you.